Hello, everybody. So today's going to finish up our some 2D stuff in Unity. A quick preview of that. It's a big, complicated engine. So again, the tutorials on that, the bar is set pretty low on those. Just click around, try some stuff. If you're not able to get it finished in the available time, that won't be a big deal at all. I know we're doing something hard in a very short amount of time. So just kind of looking at stuff, some of our key components. Next couple things to look at are animations. We'll handle those, and then collisions. And I want to talk about ray casting, which is much better than collisions when we have someplace we can do that. We'll look at that. I think he's already on this here. Yeah. I guess we'll just go ahead and jump in and get started and look at some of the things that we'd already looked at previously, see those over and over again, those basic steps of adding objects to the game and making our character move, all that basic stuff. We want to make sure we're comfortable with that. So I was thinking seeing that over and over again, help a little bit there. There's lots of ways to do it. Probably just do the easy movement again, because that's what we're going to do most of the time until we're really duplicating realism, or at least to start out. That's always a good starting point. If you decide you want more realism later, you can apply the laws of physics and move things by changing the acceleration or applying forces to the thing rather than just changing the XY position. But changing the XY position is a lot easier and works in a lot of situations. So we'll probably just do that for the example today, because the main thing today is animations. Actually, there's two parts to it, animations and animators. So I'll call this project that, animations and animators. And while this starts up, maybe jump over to while the project starts up, let's go to the Assetstore and look around for images today instead of drawing a couple. Because a lot of our big game engines, there's a store automatically synced to it where we can just go buy or download free assets. Make sure you always check the README on the assets, because sometimes there's free, like public domain stuff, just do whatever you want with it. But a lot of free assets, especially on big things like the Unity Assetstore, it's not necessarily free. The artist wants credit. So when somebody gets to the end of the game and sees the credits roll by, the artist wants to see their name there, and that's the cost of using some of the work they put on there. So I'll just Google Unity Assetstore this time instead of going in directly. Scroll past the ad. And like any store, there's lots of sales happening constantly. So if you want to buy nice assets, you can find things on sale all the time. But for the class and debugging purposes and things like that, definitely free assets have their definite convenience. So we need some sort of 2D character. Am I signed in here? I should be. Make sure you're signed in, because when we find stuff on the Unity Assetstore, we need to access it from the Unity for launch. Let's see, where was I? Oh yeah. So when you go to the Unity Assetstore, make sure you're signed in. If you click the button in Unity to get here, in the Unity editor to get here, it should sign you in automatically. If you just go into your browser like we did here, it might not sign you in automatically. So let's look for 2D. Looks like characters right there, big filter. I'll click on on that, find something. You can see there's a lot of different prices, $170, $25. Over on the filter, there's an option for free assets. What happened to the filters I just applied? Oh, I apparently clicked on the wrong thing by accident. So we can just look through here, find some sort of asset that looks like it will work good for your game. You can click on it, it's shopping stuff, so you'll see all the stuff that comes with it, all the different animations showing things all. And you just want to look through there and find a character. First up today, find a character that has some animations with it. I think I have a couple already. I'll just use maybe the ninja character or something. But that's really a matter of just clicking around, looking for it, normal shopping sort of stuff. And whenever you find something that you like, or that one, I just think I'll click on that one again. Like a free asset, Woman Warrior. And when you find it, click add to my assets and accept the licensing and all that. And it should be available from the Unity editor now, once it's added to your account. Okay, so Unity's open. So the new game's open here, so go ahead and start a couple little things. Oh, we need a background. Let me go back in there, Unity Assetstore, back to where we just were, and find a quick background to use. Something 2D. This time I'll put the environment subcategory over there on the left, and definitely clicking free assets again to find some sort of environment to put a character in. I think that animation that just downloaded was kind of a side thing, so maybe something like this. That doesn't look like it has the whole nice background or anything, so let's see what else is there. Of course, that'll make nice background. I click through. Okay, there's a bunch of layers to that. There's probably a picture in it. I'll just go with this black forest. That sounds like a good background. So you got the character in the background for them to be in front of. Might be some other stuff with it. But you just want to kind of shop around, look for different different things to work with. Yeah, that'll work. Don't necessarily need anything perfect today. We're looking at how to do the animation. So we just need a background behind the character, and then we'll bring our character in. And once you find the assets and add them to your assets under Window, see an option for Package Manager. And the second button over here in the top left of the tab has a bunch of different options, like everything in Unity, the stuff already included in the project, or under My Assets, you can access all the stuff that you found on the Unity Assetstore. What do I have? I have a thing. I think this is the one I just chose, that Woman Warrior. So you select it from the list, just hit download. And after a couple seconds, something will pop, a little box will pop up, and you can choose which ones you want to include if you don't want to, or just include everything. Didn't take too long here, hopefully. Oh, there it goes. All right, and then after it downloads, then there's an import button to import it into the current project. And at this point, you can hit check boxes if you don't necessarily want to include everything. I'll just go ahead and import everything. That'll be fine. And I don't see the other background that I did. Well, apparently I forgot to download that other background, so I'll just grab one of the backgrounds here. I think I have the background. I'll just grab the cave background. That'll work. So it makes it quick and easy to get all this stuff. So it looks like there's a lot of stuff here. Probably would not need very much of this at all, but I'm not sure which ones I need, which ones I don't need, so I'm just going to import the whole thing. Import all. Yeah, that was a lot of that was a big package. I tried to grab that other one from the Assetstore because it looked like it was really small. It only had a couple. There were layers, so they'd sit on top of each other. But apparently I missed the download or the include button somewhere in there. So now you'll see it added 2 more folders to our assets. We can go in here, I'll go into cave, see if I can find a background. That looks like a big tile set. Actually, that cave one. Actually, that one's just a big tile set, so that's not really gonna work for me. So I'll go back in here and package manager. Like this. And I thought there was a remove. I don't see the remove. I just got rid of that recently. There's another one that we imported. Let's see if I can describe that one I was looking at a moment ago. In the Assetstore. I don't need to start on sale. And there's lots of filters and they seem to be scattered around in different places. So you will also want to spend a little bit of time clicking around here, figuring out where the assets and I didn't see that first. I was just looking at it a moment ago. This is an tile set. Oh, that's a big tile set. So a lot of your environments and things, instead of having a large picture like you would use for a background, as a tile set, which we might talk about some next week, all the square, a bunch of little pieces that can go together to build the image. And then we can put them together in different orders because they'll all line up nicely. But it is quite a bit more time consuming than just throwing a background in there. What's this one? Is this just a regular background? Well, that's got to be a tile set. So like that's a tile set. A whole bunch of random pieces that can be put together to make a background instead of having one giant background. I was looking for just single image. Oh, here's that one. I had single images. Add that to my assets. All right, now it should be there. I apparently forgot to click the button. And if I close that and go back in Package Manager, I'm just not seeing it. I have no idea why that's not adding to the asset. I'm just gonna grab some random thing. For game assets is that stuff. I'm supposed to import here. And this time I will filter it down. So I've looked at this package a few times, so I know which one is an image. See, there's a lot of stuff. You can uncheck everything and just go into the background specifically. Yeah, that'll work. So I'll just select the one thing and download, import that. Instead of that great big huge package, however many pictures were there, I only need one picture from there. So in here, there should only be one picture now. Somewhere. There it is. Drag that up there. I guess there's no place for the character to stand. That's probably important too. We'll go back in here and grab some sort of platform. Definitely don't need all of this stuff. There's way too much there. Background, characters, chest, sheets. You can see there's a lot of stuff in some of these. Armor, environments is probably down here. The other ones. That'll work. I'll just grab something that looks like ground. There you go. Give our characters some place to stand at the bottom of the screen. Maybe rename these things so we can keep track of them. Organization goes a long way. Let's call that ground. And now we're ready to throw a character in there. And it often doesn't hurt. You might have noticed like the first time you run the game, if you take a minute, there's a lot of things that need to compile, and some of them only compile the very first time. So sometimes I like to just run a project automatically before anything really even happens in it. And that way, all that stuff that only needs to compile once gets out of the way before it gets really, really large. Let's see, so we'll make our character, and it looks like this one included an entire spreadsheet, all of the images that make up all the animations and stuff. It looks like this is already built entirely. So you'll notice it shows these two spreadsheets. If we extend that, then there's all the individual images that are in this character. I'm going to grab one of them and drag it up here. Looks kind of small next to that background, right? Let me drag it here. We can see her. So she's pretty small in front of that great big background. So the scale might be a little bit off. Remember, I always wanted to keep a start with a blank object, so just an empty object, and then make that image a child of that object. And then we can kind of move it around, find a good place for it, very close to the ground, but it's going to be way too small. So we need to scale that up. And just a reminder, so I'm going to select the player object where all of our logic goes, set the image and scale that to 3. See, it didn't resize the image, it just moved where that image is. It made that empty area bigger, so our image gets relocated in that image. So you don't want to scale that. Choose the image and set some sort of scale value here, maybe 3 by 3. That looks a little bit better. And then we can do stuff like we've seen before, quickly throw a script together to get her moving. We'll just do some simple movements. So on the player, add a new component. I'll just call it player, which just notice this in the way. And move the zoom stuff out of the way. I did that a lot quicker this time. We're just add component, look for player, and well, looked like it added something in player quick handler. That doesn't sound like what I wanted. So if you click on the little ellipsis button, there's a remove component. And we need a new player controller script. So I'll call it player, make a new script. Just add that in there. And now under assets, well, once things run, now we can go in here and set up our controls like we've seen a couple times. So first thing I always do is adjust it so that the curly braces are in the pattern I like, and then get rid of all the comments because comments don't really do anything. That worked. And we've seen a couple ways to make things move. the best way is to apply physics, but that involves a lot more steps and kind of also involves knowing how physics would apply and how we would handle different forces in different directions. The easiest way is just to grab our transform data and change the XY position. That works in a lot of situations. So set up some private transform data. And I'll just call it transform. I couldn't think of a name very quick, so that'll work. And when we initialize that, transform, it's going to look at the thing this script is attached to. So one of the things we can do is grab any component on any other component that's on there, but we have to deal with the generic type because we're in strictly typed language. All this is things we've seen before, right? I considered just grabbing one of the scripts we did last time, but then I thought I'd go through it again because this is we've seen it before, and this is the stuff we need to do every single time. So we'll grab that transform data. We might also need a place to set our speed. And right now, I have no idea what a good speed is going to be. So what we want to do is leave a spot on our editor, and we can make a new spot there by making any global data fields public, which says public, and a floating point number, we'll call it speed, and then that'll show up over on our editor so we can type some value in and type it into the editor to figure out what it is, so we don't have to keep coming back to the script. And then just like we saw before, we have an input manager, so we can just use that input manager to determine what keys are being pressed. We have horizontal and vertical input. I think now we probably just need maybe horizontal. That'll work for us. We'll just go back and forth and have the animation. And it looked like a warrior, so we'll add another one in the character moving back and forth. And, or have the computer move an opponent back and forth, and then we'll run the fight animation so it looks like they're fighting.
How do you import your asset from the asset store? Mine just.
Oh, okay. So you go to the editor, you go to Window. If y'all can hear me ask about Unity just opened, so he was asking about importing that. Under Window is Package Manager. See that?
Yes.
And then at the top left of the tab, not the plus sign, the thing next, but next to the plus sign. If you change that, you should see My Assets on that drop-down list. And yeah, and then you have to download it and then import it. The 2 steps after that. Oh, back to script. And our transform has X and Y positions and everything. So I'm gonna spread this out among several lines to make it a little cleaner than the one we looked at last time we did this. First off, check the input values. And the input manager gives us floating point numbers. And it's inside of a method. So that means it's only gonna have local scope to that method, so our private and public things don't apply. The floating point number for horizontal, and it'll be a number somewhere between -1 and +1. -1 being to the left, +1 being to the right. And if you think about that as a percent, somewhere between -100% and +100%, then we can just multiply that number by speed to determine how far we want to move. Same thing for vertical, but for now we'll just go up, back and forth. And to get our input manager, it's just input, and then we can get access. And all of our buttons are labeled as an axis or some sort of input axis or input dimension. And one of those being horizontal, which we've looked at a couple times. I guess we'll look at it again. If you can't remember, over in Unity, after that compiles, go to edit and project settings. There's an option for input manager. And if you expand the axes, you can see all of the dimensions that your input vectors have. So the horizontal axis, the name of it's horizontal, and see that's an input field, so you can rename it if you want to. But horizontal seems like a pretty nice name for it, easy to keep track of, and what buttons it is, and other controls. But really, what we need to get it in our script is the name attribute on it. So if we have the name attribute, that if like A is being pressed and we've held it down for more than a few milliseconds, it will have increased all the way to a -1. Or we let go of it, it'll the value will filter back down to 0 or right around 0 over a couple frames of the game. And then if we push the D key over a few frames of the game, it'll increase to a 1. So that's sort of a multiplier that we can multiply that by our speed and get a positive or negative direction. And then we can just move stuff. So I'm going to set up a couple numbers, floating point number for, say, current X position. And we can grab that from our transform. We have our transform data. Okay? So transform dot, and we can look over there, can't remember what they're called. Under player, we have transform component as position, rotation, and scale. So we say dot position, and then after the position has a dot X, dot Y, or dot Z to grab those values. So transform dot position dot X and float current Y is transform dot position dot Y. Let's go ahead and grab those values. And I probably should have done that the easy way the first time and then put it all inside of methods like we're passing as arguments. But doing this just makes it look a little bit cleaner than the one we did the other day. We can type transform dot position dot X or dot Y exactly where we need it. But if we just take a second and apply it to a useful name, it makes our code a whole lot easier to dig through and make sense of. It gives our code more vertical lines instead of horizontal breadth. And when our lines of code trail way off the side of the screen, it gets a little hard to follow the code. So lots of lines and short lines in the code are usually easier to do. I think everybody in here was probably already well aware of that. Right? Encountered that back a time or two. Lots of short, simple lines are much, much easier to deal with than one big, long, complicated line. When we have that, we can check whether our axis is being pressed and move the character accordingly. So if the horizontal is greater than 0, we want to move to the right in the positive direction. So we'll take our transform data. So transform I'll do this here. Before doing that, I'm gonna follow suit on those short, easy to follow lines. Now set up a new vector of where we want our position to be, and then just assign that. So we can set up some vector2 data. New position is a new vector2, and kind of like the number there in the name implies, we need 2 numbers for a vector2. Our X position and a Y position. So, vector 2 will be our current X. And this is where we're actually moving, right? So we take our current position and we want to add to it actually, I'll do this in a few lines. We'll come back up and do a line above this. A floating point number for X movement. And it'll be our current position plus whatever that multiplier is from the axis input manager, and somewhere between negative 100%, positive 100%. And we'll just use that as a multiplier on our speed. So that if it's negative, we move in one direction, positive, we move in another. I guess that could go up above, couldn't it? We wouldn't necessarily have to check that here. So keep things nice and organized. That's going to be the same. Whoops. I've got that whole line and move that up here. Oh, wait, we don't always need to move, do we? Never mind. We only want to do that if the horizontal axis says we're greater or less than 0. Yeah, actually, let me redo that. I'll move that up there, and we just won't do anything, because there's one other thing I want to do when we get to animations. That's why I'm splitting this up into 2 things. We have more to put in this if statement here in about 20 minutes. Actually, before then, and here in about 5 minutes, we'll come back and after we do our first test, we'll come back and add something. So then our new vector 2 will be the X movement, and the Y value isn't going to move. We're just pushing the A and D, right? So that's still going to stay at the same current Y. And then the current Y is going to change when we push the space bar and jump there in a little while. When there's an enemy with a sword charging at us, we just jump over them. Seems like a quick, easy way to do that, or either jump over them or hit them with our sword is the basic plan for the game for today. So we have a couple of options. And this one might not be your first intuition, right? You're thinking horizontal greater than 0 or less than 0, move left or right. But I'm going to explicitly state those 2 and ignore the else case. That's just something I found over years. If that is right at 0, then we're not going to move. And a lot of times, instead of doing an if else, I'll do an if else if. That way there's a condition every time and have explicit control over what's going to happen. And really, the movement's going to be exactly the same. That is for when our character is facing the wrong way. When our images are all going to face like to the left. When we move to the right, it'll look a little funny. So that's when we need to know which direction we're moving. But we'll get to that in a second. Here's our basic movement. Looks a little bit cleaner than last time, right? Make that wider. It almost all fits on there. So right in the update method, we just check what the input axis is doing. Use a couple variables to apply meaningful names, make it easier to work with the values we actually care about in our calculation. And then we apply those new ones. And after we apply them, then our transform dot position, the one actually assigned to our character, can get reassigned that new position value. Then I'll copy that and paste it down here. So same stuff we saw before. something we do basically every time. There's lots of different ways we can make the character move. So the quick, easy movement here, just changing the X position when we push the button. Any questions about that? That's stuff we've seen before, so hopefully it looks familiar. Wait for the compiler to run, and we do need to pick a speed. A speed of 0 is not going to work. We multiply something by 0, it's just going to cancel out every time. I'm going to try 0.3 and see what that looks like. And when it's running, we can change that value. And a couple other things that we've seen before. There's ground here. We're looking at it as a side view, like platform gaming. So the easiest way to get that character to stand on the ground would just be apply the laws of physics. So that gravity pulls it down and we have some sort of barrier. So on the player, I'll add a rigid body 2D component. And anyway, just make sure the gravity scale is not set to 0. So the gravity is pulling down. We can get more control over those as things get more advanced with the actual mass and how much drag we're experiencing and friction. And we use drag to simulate friction in different scenarios, things like that. Get more control over it, but I'm just gonna go with the default value, which will have gravity pulling us down. And we do need a boundary for our character. So after adding the physics, I'll just search for a box glider. Make sure you choose the 2D version. I can't see it. Move my background out of the way. Oops. And oh, there's the box. Where? I'm gonna make this like -10 for now. Get that out of the way because I do not see that box glider anywhere on there. Oh, there it is. That's a really strange place for it to put it. No idea why I put it over there, but got the little handles and drag that to the area it needs to be. I have no idea why that happened. Every once in a while that does happen. I'll move the background back in the back now. So I select the player and hit the edit that thing. Now we can see that box is actually where it should be for our character. Make it a little bit bigger than her body. I'm not sure what the other frames in the animation look like. I haven't checked ahead yet. But I'm guessing when that character starts swinging the sword around, it would need a bigger bounding box. But we can come back and check that later. And one other thing, in order for collisions to be detected, one of the things will need the laws of physics, so rigid body, and both things will need a bounding box. So to stop when it hits the ground, we want to select the ground and add a box glider there as well. Which that one probably worked a lot better. Yeah, since there wasn't an empty game object, the ground was just there on the image itself. There's no logic going to be applied to it. It's just a picture there. So included that bounding box. It could see there was something there and automatically put it in the right shape. That just didn't work on our player image because our player data was actually empty. And I guess it didn't notice the thing there. Now our character should stand on the ground. The physics takes over, it stands on the ground. And if we push right, oh, that's way too fast of a speed. She probably fell off the edge of the thing there. It's just kind of falling forever. So 0.03. I'll add another zero in there and see if that's a speed that doesn't just send her flying off the edge of the screen there. Okay, that looks like a better speed. So every time we're just moving either positive or -1 times that 0.03. But by default, the Unity editor or Unity engine is probably set to 140 frames per second. So speed is often going to be a small number. You'll get used to it as you make more and more games. It'll be a really, really small number. You got to remember it's happening 140 frames times a second. So like your quickest reaction to push and release a key is probably going to be several frames of the game. Human reaction is a lot slower than computer speeds. So little things like that need refinement. If you want to change it, you can change it. Check for things while the game's running. Maybe like 0.7, moving faster, or 0.1. Get her moving really, really slow. The thing to remember is after you find that value, when you stop the run, notice it went back to what was typed before the run started. So when you test different values and hone in on the number you actually want to go there, remember after you stop the run, you have to type it back in. There's one little thing though. We can see in her movement. When she moves to the right, that's fine. Looks like that image is going to work. If I push left, she's just walking backwards. She'll probably be facing that direction when she walks that way, right? So the quickest way to handle that is in our script. We've talked about it before. Transform data, we have position, rotation, and scale. And one of the things about scale, or now it's 1, so it's 100%, like 100% scale. But if we make that negative, so a number smaller than that, 100% down to 50%, 25%, eventually get down to 0, and when we go negative, it flips everything over. So the best way to turn our character around would be to switch that X scale from a +1 to a -1 whenever, depending on which direction we're facing. So I'll go back over in the script and set up a value for that. If horizontal is greater than 1, that's when we want to set this transformed scale to a +1. So we say transform.scale, and we do have a .x, .y, .z, but those are read-only properties. It's kind of like we saw before. There's 3 values that always go together. So we have to feed that in as a vector. We can read what each one are, like we did up here. But when we make a change, like we did to position, we need an entire vector in order to make that change. So the scale is going to be a new vector 2, and I'll just do that as 1.0, 1.0. And remember, game engines always want to use floating point numbers. We want to save those 32 bits on our data size, so we have to type it in. Make sure it's a floating point number. Then I'll copy and paste that. And if we're less than 0, that means we push the A key, we want to move to the left. We can change that X value to a -1. And that should flip our image around. Hopefully that's going to flip our image because I changed the transform on fix typos. I changed the transform on that parent one, not the image itself. We're going to make a typo at. Transform, not transform. We'll fix the typo and notice this. We have something right here that says scale. We're getting an error message that says we don't have anything called scale. There are a couple different scales that we apply. So we actually want local scale instead of scale. It's abbreviated on the other one, but there's a local scale and a global scale, how it fits into the world at large and how it applies to itself. We change local scale, then those error messages should go away. Okay. Error messages went away. Why did that not change? One. Okay. I was worried that wasn't going to quite work out right, but this is a nice little adjustment. Nice little thing to show to fix this. So let's just apply that to our image instead of the parent object. So in order to do that, we'll need a reference to our image, or at least some aspect of our image. So I'm going to make it public, and there's a lot of different things it could be. We can narrow it down. Really, we want the transform data, but instead of stopping and thinking a whole lot about it, I'm just going to ask for a game object, because everything in Unity is a game object. So that's sort of our catch-all. I'll say image. And then we can initialize that the same way. It's public. So when we get back over to the Unity editor, we'll have a little spot where we can make an assignment there instead of doing it in our script. So then here, instead of the transform data, I'm going to use that image. That image is going to have some transform data with it. And then that'll have a local scale, which is already set to 33. And -3, -33. Image, not transform, not local scale. If that makes the issue. Oh, well, I forgot to make the assignment. Where we at? So on player, here in our script, we have a spot to load in an image now, some sort of game object. So to fill that reference, we can just grab the image from here in the hierarchy and drag it right over there. And notice now, we push the D key, it faces to the right, and the A key sends that facing to the left. Moves across the screen pretty quickly. Might need to slow that down a little. But see how we can make multiple references to the same thing. And I have no idea what was happening when we switched the other one, the parent object to a -1. It did the same thing, but somehow it sent her way far away. I have no idea where it sent the image. Let's see where it went. Completely disappeared somewhere. But we can always refer to anything else in our hierarchy that way. Make a quick reference to it as a game object, and then grab any of the components for that game object directly over here in our script. Might as well make her jump real quick. Let's look at if I can look at the input options we have. So under horizontal, vertical is the W and S, and that doesn't seem right for jumping. We usually want to jump with the W or S key. Fire 1, left control, fire 2, or there's just a jump, which is conveniently for the space bar, what we're probably used to jump the one we most likely want to use for the jump. Again, we have control over that. You see, those are all input boxes. You can change them to whatever you want. We also have a jump dimension in our input manager vector. So same thing, we can grab the number. Jump is input, get access. And we want the jump axis. It does have to be spelled the same way it's written over in the name on that we just looked at on the window. And then we can do some little changes here. And I'm going to start this off with another if. Actually, I'm going to make this change up here. So y'all have probably encountered by now, sometimes when we jump, our left and right control still works. And that seems a little bit odd because in real life, once we leave the ground, we don't have control to still move left and right. So a good way to handle that is put all of the movements in one thing and do something like make your jump the first condition. So if jumping, then deal with that vertical aspect, and then you can only do the left and right components if not jumping. You see how that selection structure is forming here? Well, I guess I could actually write it in here. If jump is greater than 0, then we'll move in a vertical direction. And we'll only hit those else ifs that move left and right if we're not jumping. So the only option for jumping, no matter what we were doing before, is to go straight up and straight back down. More of a realistic situation. That disregards momentum, so we wouldn't have. If we're moving fast and jump up, it's still going to be straight up and down. There's little refinements that can be worked into the code over time and are often unique for the game, the images you're working on. So that's just something to keep in mind, that you can add little refinements to handle momentum and things like that. Which, if you're thinking about that, you'd probably be using the laws of physics to move anyway, not X and Y positions directly. And basically it'll be the same movement, just in the Y direction. I'll call it jump position. It's gonna be a new vector 2. And our X value, we don't want to change that, so it's gonna be the current X position. And our Y value, we want to adjust what that is. Move up a certain distance. Which might need to try a few numbers. So I'm going to make another public variable here. Call it jump speed. That way it'll show up on the editor, and when we run it, we can just try different numbers to see what works out there. And our current, then we'll take our current Y. Actually, I'll do it the same way I did up here. Float jump movement is the current Y position plus that jump value, actually, plus the jump speed. That one's not going to work as a multiplier. Then our new vector is just jump movement. And that should send our character straight up, and then before long, gravity will kick in and the character will fall back down to the ground. Then once again, our transform data will set the position to that jump position we just made. Especially at first, as you're putting your scripts for games together, you want to think about names like that. Even if you have a way to refer to things, it can be very, very helpful to put it into a new variable name that's meaningful and useful for your own reference purposes later. And we shouldn't need to turn the image. If we jump, we don't turn around every single time. So whatever direction we were already facing should be fine there. Oh, there's speed in that. Right now, jump is 0, so it doesn't go up at all. But we said jump to like 5. It went way up there. If you look, so 5 was way too big. If you look at the position over in the transform in the inspector, at a speed of 5, it disappears, and we're up at like 140 something. So it's going to take a minute before the character falls back down under gravity alone. 5 is way too big. So what's 0.5? That went up to like 16, but still way off the screen. 0.05? That's better. If I just tap it quick, she just barely leaves the ground. If I hold it down, she can get a higher jump. So selection structures in the code would be nice to put an upper bound on that, like how long it can be held down for. Like set a frame counter, and you'll get like 10 frames is the maximum for the jump. And then once that frame counter goes down by 10 frames, you can't stop jumping no matter what. Little things like that. Looks like we can double jump. Little refinements can be made, but that'll get us a start there. So it looks like 0.05 works for a number. And when we stop the run, it removed that from the thing, so we have to start over there. So I think we've seen all that before. Was there anything new there? Well, we downloaded the stuff from the Assetstore. We did that quickly, but didn't really see anything. We saw movement. Oh, turning around, that was new. So our character, see how to make the character face the right way, just using that scale value. And we can jump. We're running along and jump. Oh, looks like there is still control. Well, let go of the space bar. So moving along, hit the space bar, and when I let go, it goes back to the horizontal movement. So there's still a little bit there, more refinements that can be made, but you'll make those refinements through selection structures and logical conditions. Bunch of ands and ors and nots working into the conditions make things big and complicated. Maybe a frame counter can be really useful at times. And just refine some good values that lead to reasonable movement. But the main thing we haven't seen yet is there are a whole lot of images that that you can do. If I just open up the whole spreadsheet, let's see, it looks like that's probably an idle animation in the top row. Looking at this, I think each row is a different animation. That's what y'all think? Does it seem about right? Where's my zip? Zoom, 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 zoom. Oh, actually, it's not even any rows. So that top one is just standing there breathing. So it's like standing there waving her arms or something, idle animation. Then we get into charging animation. She lunges forward. Oh, and that's still part of that. So she runs forward, brings the sword up, and slashes the sword. And I guess all of that is the attack animation. And then about here is the getting attacked animation. There were color changes. So we need to go through and figure out which frames go with which animations. Hopefully some names on them. And then see that other main component that we want to, the thing we often want to deal with, and we don't want to just use a still image. We want to use a still image when debugging, because animations are very eye-catching, and other bugs in our game will hide behind animations. Great big bugs can hide behind little bitty animations, but we need to see that. First off, probably a break though. 10 minutes sound good. I see big head nods here in the class. I assume similar things on Zoom call. So my laptop says 2:08, so we'll get back to it at 2:18. See y'all in 10 minutes. And then we'll do animations. Yes.
For some reason, they can't